We're continuing our walk through the book of John, and we're in John chapter 6 if you want to read along with me, and I want to start with something weird that happens in the lives of the disciples of Jesus. And this one, once you see it, it's really, it's something we all know that Jesus did, and so it's hard to see it anew and to be captured by the wonder of it. I don't know that I'm a talented enough speaker to get you to do that, but I'm going to encourage you, in as much as you can, let this hit your heart again. But before I get to the thing that's so amazing that it has to hit our heart, I want to see something in the scripture and see if you agree with me, because I see myself so much in this. I don't want to be like this, but I saw something in my studies this week that I'm like, oh my goodness, do I ever do that? And does it ever turn out almost exactly the same way? Not exactly the same way, because I don't get into a boat, but let's just start into the scriptures. In John chapter 6, verse 15, it says, "Perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force and make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum." Why did they do that? The other Gospels will let us know that Jesus, was going to withdraw up into the mountains to pray, and he left them there to disperse the crowd, right? And as he goes off to pray. And it doesn't give this motive that Jesus has got to get away from them because they're going to try and force him to be king. But But what's not here is any instruction to get into a boat. Do you see that? There's a part of me that wonders, what are they doing down by the sea? Jesus went up into the mountains. Why did they go down to the sea? Why didn't they go up into the mountains? The big thing these 12 guys did was walk around and be with Jesus. Everywhere he went, they went. Now, it's certainly possible that Jesus, before he heads off into the mountains, grabs hold of Peter and says, "Hey, go get in the boat, get out of here." Maybe he gave them that instruction, but John doesn't tell us that they did. What you got here is a picture of the disciples of Jesus walking away from Jesus. Is it just me, or does that seem kind of dumb? Especially when you look at the outcome of it. Let's just go just a little bit further. The sea became rough. Got into a boat and started across to Capernaum. Now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them, and the sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea. And what's happening here is they're out on rough sea, and they're at the 3 or 4 mile point. I'm not sure. Anybody got any seafaring experience? When you're 3.5, 4 miles out at sea, can you see the shore? I don't know whether you can or not. I honestly haven't spent enough time on ship to know that. I meant to look it up before I preached this sermon, and I forgot. But that is, for the Sea of Galilee, I did look this up, that's the midpoint. 3.5, 4 miles is the midpoint of the Sea of Galilee. And it's about 12 miles long, and it's about 7 miles wide. So if they went 3.5 miles out to sea, they're about as far out into trouble as you can get. And the waves are going nuts. We've seen them in this kind of trouble before, and I suspect they're in this kind of trouble now where fishermen are scared. And if you're Matthew, a tax collector, and you're in a boat, and you see, Peter getting nervous, if you've not spent a whole ton of time out on the water, and so you don't know how bad it is, but you look and you see Peter and Andrew, and they're like, oh man, you're scared, right? How did they get into this trouble? Jesus went into the mountains, and they went down to the sea. I don't know, I may be making more of that than I should. And so if you don't want to see the point from the text, then think about the point together with me, because do you ever do that? Do you ever find yourself going out kind of on your own? Let me suggest that sure you do. Because Jesus never leads you into sin, right? So just about every time that you've lost your temper in a really ugly way, you've been out on the sea while he's up in the mountains. Or just about every time when it may take you a long time to realize where you were, but when you've had this ugliness come up between you and another person, and you look at it and you're like, weeks later, you look back on it and finally you can see where, well, I was wrong right here, and I wouldn't let go of it. You were out on the sea while he was up in the mountains. Or when your lust took over, or your whatever hunger it is that drives you, your hunger for attention, your hunger for power, your hunger for, for sex, your hunger for whatever it is that is driving you and running your life other than God, and you were deep into that and engaged with it. Do you know what I'm talking about? You're out on the sea, and he's up in the mountains. Or maybe what it is you're like, I can handle this. I need to take control of this. I need to fix this about me. This problem that's here inside of me where I'm misbehaving. Well, if I work hard enough at it, I'll be a good person. I just need to make sure that I take control of this by myself so that I can be good enough to go be with God. Well, if you have to become good enough to go be with God, are you with God? Maybe you're out on the sea while he's up in the mountains. Like I said, I don't know, maybe Jesus gave them instruction, but the text doesn't tell us that they did, and their choice to leave while the Lord is up there, that seems like I can handle this. I know what's supposed to come next, and I'll do it. And I'm good enough at running my own life, so I'll go run my life. Even though they've been walking with him and watching these miracles happen over and over again, boy, are they ever silly. Well, have you read the miracles? Then you've seen them. Do you do it? I do, and it seems to go badly every time. The moments that I am most ashamed of are the moments when I'm least attentive to God. And I don't know, maybe this again is more me than anybody else, but I find when I'm getting ready to really misbehave, that my own stubborn will often will encounter God saying, don't do that. And I'll be like, but I want to. That terrifies me about my own heart. Don't get in that boat. Look at it's wide water. You need him with you. Don't get in that boat. But I want to. God, save me from the times when I think that I'm good enough to run my life on my own. Because every disaster that's ever happened in my life has not happened because of God's direction. I have never looked at a behavior God directed me to do with regret. I may regret the stuff in the world around me. I don't regret what he tells me to do that I do. When I do what he tells me to do, I'm like, yeah, that, even if nothing else went right, that was right. But I regret all kinds of things that I do to show God who I can be. When I get into that boat and get out on that water and the wind gets rough, it gets scary, doesn't it? Have you ever spent the moment in your life when you're looking into your own heart and you're like, what kind of man am I? Why am I like this? You ever been afraid? I tell you, what can be one of the most terrifying things to experience is when you're in the middle of that and then God shows up. I told you not to go here. Why are you here? What are you doing hiding in the dark? Come on out to me. Well, once you come out, it's not scary anymore. I've always found that God is good. But boy, is that ever an old fear. It goes all the way back to the very beginning of sin in the first place. The very start of it. Adam and Eve, their eyes are open, they see they're naked, and they're ashamed. And what do? They run into the dark. They hide. And God comes walking in the cool of the day saying, where are you? That where are you? When God first comes to you, it can be so frightening. But once you're with Him, once you're experiencing His goodness again, His forgiveness and His grace and His mercy and even His correction, where He's like, look, this hurt you. Let's not do that again. Even that is good. And once you invite Him back into your life, once you are willing to accept His invitation to come back into His life, once you get Him in the boat, it's not scary anymore. In fact, it all seems to work out again. I think maybe that's the message of this text. Let's keep going just a little bit further. It says the sea became rough, a strong wind was blowing, and when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, when they're right in the middle of the trouble, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near to the boat, and they were frightened. Well, boy, I guess so. That is terrifying. Especially if you don't know who it is, right? That's got to be death coming for me. Don't you think? Or a ghost? Someone to guide me over to the other shore? Because I'm not getting to the other shore of this lake. I'm getting to the other shore supernaturally. I'm going away. If you saw that, wouldn't you? And especially if everyone in the boat saw it. And then can you imagine the first person to see it and they point and they scream? Or they yell, what is that? And the boat goes down into the waves are high, and then it comes back up, and there it is again. And it's closer. Ah! And then you realize it's a person, but they're on top. They're not sinking. They're walking on it. Oh, man. Why is this picture here? I honestly think that one of the hardest things to do is to repent. To admit I don't have it all together. It's hard because it's scary. Because in order to do it, in order to really come to terms with the fact that, yes, indeed, I am, in fact, evil. I do, in fact, practice things that are not like Him. And I did it again. To come to terms with that, oh, that's so frightening, because then I have to admit I'm evil and I'm throwing myself on His mercy. It's scary. But He said to them, it is I. Do not be afraid. I almost wonder if He had to say, do not be afraid. Because if you know this man, it is I and do not be afraid are nearly synonyms. This is a good man. How has He been treating them all along? He's welcomed these people into His life. He's blessed them and He's filled up their life with good things. How do I know? Because that's what He does. Isn't it what He does with you? Isn't your life better because you walk with Him? Doesn't His teaching fill up your life with not only good things, but a good you? And what do you want more than that? What would you give in exchange for that? It is I. Well, if it's you, then I'm okay. I'm all right. And I don't have to be afraid. And what Jesus is telling us is that when you've done it again and you've blown it and you went out into the wind and the waves and you've put yourself in the boat and He wasn't with you and you decided to be God. You decided to seek your own goods. You decided to run away from your own bad. You were going to win that fight. You were going to destroy your enemy instead of forgiving and loving them. Or you're going to have victory and set them straight. Or you were going to take the thing that you desired, no matter who it hurt. You're in the boat yourself, living your life for yourself. And then you wake up and realize, I'm in real trouble here. I am in the middle of the sea and the waves are really tall. When he comes and says, it's I, then you can know, okay, he's better, and invite him in, which is what they do. Then they were glad to take him into the boat. Well, of course they were. Aren't you? When you finally come kind of to terms with yourself and realize, I'm being dumb again. I'm trying to fix this all myself. I'm taking his responsibility on me. I'm trying to seek the good life for myself. I'm trying to seek the things that I want without his permission. I'm trying to break out and fight and destroy again. I'm doing it again. And then he says, hey, come here. And you welcome him into the boat of your life. Man, aren't you glad that he's willing to come again? Because he didn't give up on us. He doesn't back away. He doesn't reject or refuse. He comes even impossibly. Because how could he get there? We learned in the next sermon, we learned that there was only one boat there. And he didn't come in a boat. He comes impossibly, walking on the waves. Then they were glad to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going. That's always struck me as really wild, because the lake's 7 miles across, and he puts one foot in the boat, and they get to their destination. Boom. How fast did that boat go once he stepped in, right? What, did he bring an outboard motor or something? Immediately it was okay. Immediately it's all right. And not just all right, but you get where you need to be. Why is it like that in the story? Because it's like that in my life. Because the moment I come to terms with, I'm being stupid, I've gone to the sea when he was in the mountains. I should have gone to the mountains. But I went to the sea, but he came to me here. He met me here, and please help me. He does. And not just a little bit. In this story, he doesn't just say, peace be still, which would be good enough to calm down the waves, right? That would be great, but he doesn't. He takes them where they need to be. Isn't that what he does with you? When he sets things to rights, when he heals the damage you did, when he resolves this trouble. I mean, sometimes I still have to deal with the crud, because that's part of what he's going to do to me. It's part of what it means to be good, is to lead me through the consequence, teach me, don't do this again. But sometimes he just says, hey, let me take you where you need to be. Let me put your feet on solid ground again. That was scary, wasn't it? Stick with me. And who is it that I'm sticking with? I think this story has that end in it too, because the way that it begins is they were going to come and force Jesus to do something. Does that work for you when you try? Don't tell me you don't do that. I mean, maybe I'm alone, but I will go into prayer with the intention of driving him to do things, especially when it really matters to me. My mother fell and broke her leg, broke her ankle 3 places last week. She had her hip replaced the week before, and now she broke the other ankle, so she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Thank you. Seems to me that Jesus ought to take care of that. He just ought to do it. When I first heard about it, the idea of wanting to come and force him to be king, yeah, I got it. I understand that feeling, because if there's anything that I could, if I could, man, I'd grab him by the wrist, twist his arm up behind his back, and take him with me to Mississippi, All right, do your thing, bud. Can't force him to do anything. That's part of the reason I find myself so often in the boat, is that I forget my status and his. He is God, I am not. And my role in this whole story is to bring him glory, not me. And so I've got to live for his glory in my life. And even if that means my mom suffers, And somehow I get to watch her faithfully do that and try to be faithful in my own suffering because of her. Hey, if that's the story he chooses to tell, great. Because he's God. And I can't force him to change it. I can't force him to do anything. And even the miracle that he does here is an announcement of that. Who is it that walks on water? Right there in the book of Genesis, when the whole thing opens up, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. It's where he started the whole story. In the book of Job, in chapter 9, and one of those poems says, God alone walks upon the waves. When Jesus does this, and then he says, it's I, where have you heard that phrase before? It's I am. And he's making divinity claims here, both by his rejection of human control. Didn't he come to be king? Yeah, but not their way. But didn't he come to be king? Yeah, but not my way. Yeah, he came to be Lord and God and Master Supreme. And I've got to trust him and walk with him no matter what's going on. And when I have found that I have put myself in difficult situations where I have ruined everything, the temptation is, well, I'll get this fixed. I can handle this. I can, the finances, I can move that around. I can change it. It's all right. It is I. Don't be afraid. My big job in my life, every single day, is say, I'm glad to have you in the boat with me. Thank you for leading me to the place where I need to be. Thank you for taking care of me, because I live in a disruptive, wild world, and I am a disruptive, stupid person, but glory to God, you are good. And if you're with me, well, then who do I have to be afraid of? What do I have to be scared of? And even the mess I make of myself and the failures in my life, you can lead me through those. And if I will listen and obey and walk with you, and I am with you, I am safe. So please, get in the boat. I am glad to have you, my God, with me. Because I'm not big enough or strong enough or smart enough or wise enough or powerful enough or any of that to be God. But I trust you. And I'm glad you're with me. And isn't it great, wherever you are, isn't it great to hear him say to you, it's me. Don't be afraid. I don't know where you are or what you came to this place bringing with you. I don't think anybody is literally, you're all sitting in pews, so none of you are literally in a boat. But you might be in a boat. And he may have gone up into the mountains and you've been walking down to the sea. And if you're looking into your life and you're like, you know what, I'm making a mess of things again. Don't try to be God. You don't have to fix that yourself. You're not alone. Invite him into the boat. And if you need us to be in the boat with you, if you need somebody that you can confess your trouble to and to say, this is what I'm struggling with, then let us know. Because we care about you. And we'll invite you in, invite him in. We'll do that with you. Maybe that you came to this place and you're carrying a burden that has nothing to do with what I've talked about. But the trouble of this world is heavy on you. And if that's you, this church wants to pray for you. We are a praying church. Let us do it. And if you haven't started following Jesus yet, the one who walked on the water invites you to the water. Come with us as we go with him. Because he is good and he is beautiful. And you don't have to be afraid. If this morning you're subject to the invitation of Christ, there's room right here. Why don't you come right now while we stand and sing?